Uh, we are now working, when we talk about livelihoods, especially in this kind of environment, that is semi-arid, which is very diverse, which is hot and dry weather, which comprises of the large part of this country, and many livelihoods depend on natural resources. In order to develop a sound and sustainable natural resources management strategy, which is inextricably woven with the livelihoods of the people, our strategies generally are natural resource based, and they're farm production based, and support to farm activities, and the non-farm activities as well, and also addressing migration and remittances. The research on sustainable rural livelihoods is a different kind of research which the scientists of agricultural research, NARS, were not used to hitherto. It is doing business a little differently. We are adopting a different approach. Methodology is different. It's not the T1, T2, T3, T4 and control approach. It's a different approach in terms of action research is being used as a major framework for research here. And many of these institutes, as we all know in the developing countries, did research in the typical own way of doing research on their own. Never even looked at what is going on in the institute next, or for that matter, what the next scientist or next department is doing. Right? Rather a compartmentalized approach, watertight compartments. Now, we actively seek partnerships, find out different players who have strengths in different areas, and we are prepared for different outcomes. The methodologies that we adopt in this is not the area approach that we used to have earlier. Even though it is area approached, it is much smaller in terms of Gram Panchayat or a group of villages as a cluster. And there was a pre-project consultation with the stakeholders and identifying appropriate intervention based on resource endowment, benchmarking, then developing interventions based on the kind of group dynamics that exist in a particular place, then a continuous monitoring and evaluation framework, which is a part of the ongoing action research project. The objectives of this project are to improve the livelihoods of the rural poor, that we already discussed about how do we do this by managing the resources better, and also talk about adding value and increasing profitability at farm level and developing good market linkages. The third one, which is relevant to this session, is capacity building of primary and secondary stakeholders through knowledge sharing, collective action and use of ICTs. And lastly, very importantly, we talked a lot these days about the core research agenda and did not talk much about the support systems that are needed to take the research findings back into the field. When certain technology is not adopted by a desired number of people, we always blame either the technology or the adopters. We call them laggards. But we don't really examine what kind of support system is required to make a technology adoptable. It's like, no doubt, the technology is a hero, but we also need the support actors to make a film, to make an entertainment package. So, in order to do that, what kind of support system is required? Just let us think of an example of an agricultural implement which is used for only 15 days in a year, is good sowing equipment, which costs about 35,000 rupees. Many farmers may not be able to buy it because they just need it for 15 days. Second thing is it is too investment intensive. Third thing is they don't know how to operate it. Fourth thing is if it comes for repair, who is there to repair it? Fifth thing is that how it can be maintained over time and where it can be stored during when it is not in use. These are several questions that we need to answer when we want to introduce these things. If we answer all these questions, then it is like having provided a support system for that technology to take off. The target area we are working is this area, larger Telangana, as well as a part of Rayalaseema, which is typically drought prone, diverse and vulnerable to climate change. And we have already discussed in the previous presentations as to what is going to happen in the event of climate change. About 117 millimeters of rainfall in just 2 spells of 1 hour and 2 hours each on a day last week in Hyderabad. So what are the consequences of this? About 1/6 of entire annual rainfall is pouring down in just 3 hours. So do we have the capacity to store this rainwater and reuse it? And what is the kind of system that we need to develop? Because this is the only source of crop cultivation and on which several livelihoods are dependent. So we'll just look at some of the measures that we are doing in this project as we go along. As I said, we have a cluster approach, we have a household approach. We concentrate between 2,000 to 2,500 people in a cluster of villages, about 500 to 1,000 hectare area on a watershed basis. So this is the consortium. And particularly in the private sector, we have 2 important players. One is Akriti, which is a private extension service provider, and iKisan Limited, which is our ICT partner. The representative, Mr. Vijay, is already here with us. This is, as I was discussing, that this is the way we have opened up to harness the strengths of different partners who can play a very important role in improving the livelihoods of the rural poor in the event of, whether it is climate change or no climate change. The rural livelihoods need to be supported in the way they need to be. That is because the whole livelihoods are based on natural resources that are already declining. So the major key interventions are based on resource conservation focused, whether it is soil resource or rainwater. When we call water here, it's only rainwater because there is no major irrigation project, and to some extent groundwater. Crop, livestock and horticulture based, value addition and market linkages related, and involving new kinds of institutions, people's institutions, both at grassroots level as well as at a higher level, and capacity building as the overarching intervention that goes into every one of these interventions. Then we did a need assessment at the cluster level. These interventions were not just planned at the institute level, thinking that this might be necessary, that might be necessary. A long period of consultation was there. I don't want to go into the details. Of course, these need assessment was done sector-wise, NRM, crops, livestock, horticulture, and certain gender issues, and what are the issues facing rural youth, that is educated and but not employed, who are not interested in farming as well. So now coming to the topic proper, that is how are we leveraging ICTs for livelihood security to promote this one for knowledge empowerment. We have a strong belief that knowledge sharing is a must, and it can be used along with, in combination with traditional media. Then project is committed to establishing ICT infrastructure and demonstrating its efficacy in knowledge empowerment. Exclusive budget is allocated for all the 8 clusters where we're working. And we have an exclusive ICT for D partner, iKisan, as I discussed, as I mentioned before. Then cluster-specific content generation. There are some clusters where cotton is important crop. There are 2 clusters where groundnut is an important crop. So we develop content which is made available both online, offline formats, and these clusters are loaded with only that kind of information. And then capacity building of rural youth in ICT kiosk operation. This we did with a specific program. We identified 3 to 4 rural youth from each of the clusters and then got them trained in Sri Ramananda Tirtha Rural Training Institute based in Nalgonda district for about 45 days in computer operation, basic computer operations. And these boys and girls were later hired as computer operators at kiosk levels. And they are from the community. They are multi-purpose workers. They are multi-purpose knowledge workers. Then tie up with leaders in ICTs like ISRO, ICRSAT, and Nokia. We had a presentation by Nokia some time back, and we are very actively considering getting these cell phone connections and subscribing to those crops which are important in those clusters, and also sharing this information through other means with larger stakeholders. Then this is how we have developed a specific instruments, like our ICT partner has helped us procure touchscreen kiosks which can be operated by the farmers themselves, and in which local content is developed. Generic content is developed by iKisan's experts, then it is validated by the experts in CREDA, and then it is deployed again on the touchscreen kiosks, which are both offline and online content accessibility is possible. Then knowledge empowerment strategy, as I said, each cluster is unique in terms of resource endowment and community capacity. Cluster specific content is already developed both in terms of NRM, livestock and markets. Then content delivery online, offline. Select rural youth trained on basic computer operations. Trained youth employed as project kiosk operators. And kiosk operator capacity is built to act as a para worker. Then this is the infrastructure. In fact, we have an exclusive building which is called Village Resource Center, built at a cost of 8 lakh rupees in all the 8 clusters. And each of these buildings houses the ICT kiosks, and this site is, there is a lot of participatory exercise that has gone before actually building this, constructing these buildings. And Panchayat has actually donated this space. In some places, people have bought land and donated it to the project. And provision is made for housing ICT related equipment, as well as to store the custom hiring equipment. As I mentioned, it may be a seed cum fertilizer drill, or it could be some sprayers, or it could be a tractor driven seeder, or any such things, or for a short term duration of storage of some important material like seed or fertilizer or a micronutrient. So this is how a kiosk looks. You just see people operate it on their own with a little bit of training and mediation. And this is what I was talking when it comes to sharing the information which we are able to download from either offline or online content. And we are sharing this information by having a board outside in which local language it is written. People can come and what is the event, what is important for that week. If it is a castor, if it is on cotton, is there any major pest incidents? This is a combination of both ICT as well as the traditional medium. And we have also provided for an LCD screen where people can come in and then have a look at the CDs of their liking. For example, we have made a CD library, VCD library in all these 8 centers, which is actually operated by the kiosk operator. People can come and then have a look at the kind of improved dairy management or management of Ranikhet disease and foot and mouth disease in animals. Things like that we have copied and then kept all the CDs from into these kiosks. Then we have some issues related to connectivity, because all these buildings are located in the remote corners where definitely connectivity is an issue. And thanks to this mobile connectivity, we are trying to use the mobile signals for giving some semblance of connectivity to these places. Hopefully things will improve, and then by the time we are able to exit, we'll have a better system in place. Then this is how we have identified which is the strongest signal available in a particular cluster, and there we have provided with this connectivity there. And we are also, you see Balaji here, who is helping us. Nowadays distance has become such a thing that even though we dwell in the same city, if I have to get to Balaji's place, Ikrisat, from down south in this city, it takes my whole day. So many times we operate on teleconferencing. Similarly, in another one, you see a group of scientists operating with this kind of implement has been fixed in all the 8 clusters, where we will be talking in not exactly with the farmers, but certain issues with the cluster anchors who are dealing with the day-to-day issues at the village level, like whether it has rained or not, if it has rained, what kind of seed is required, whether there is enough seed available, or because this is a delayed sown condition, which other seeds could be required. This kind of discussions are possible without actually having to visit the place. Then we have a website which is again developed by iKisan, and is available, where we get the progress of all the clusters going on for larger sharing with other people. And on our own, we have a small web page where we keep uploading the success stories, failure stories as well. And then lastly, I just have this slide to particularly keeping in view the kind of weather conditions that prevailed in the past 2-3 months. A delayed monsoon, and then later it has been raining. So we had to keep regular communication with all the cluster anchors, who are essentially NGOs who are implementing interventions on our behalf. Then accessing and disseminating weather information on a daily basis. We have put up a chart, and every day our research associates call and find out whether it has rained or not in that day. And previous days we would have seen the forecast and then made some recommendations, and based on whether it has rained or not, we will once again revise that one. Procuring and distributing seeds and critical inputs for drought coping, and disseminating water availability and utilization threshold information to the community, and measure to maintain livestock resources by mobilizing feed, fodder, and certain prophylactic measures. When the temperatures are high, humidity is of certain level, and no rainfall, and the animals tend to catch many diseases, especially FMD, which is very prevalent in all these clusters, and mobilizing the animal husbandry department support and things like that. This is what we are trying to do by leveraging the budget that we have under ICTs for whatever infrastructure we were able to create, and how we are able to use for managing water, livestock, and crop resources in the livelihood project that we are managing in 8 districts. Thank you very much.